everyone, welcome to this video about how to add negative numbers. So I believe that everything in life, including math, is a lot easier when we love ourselves. So today I'd like to encourage you to give yourself a little bit of extra love by realizing that you are learning more every day. Whether it's something small, something big, every single day you're learning and you're making progress. And even if it doesn't feel like you're making progress fast enough or the way you want to, just take a moment to give yourself acknowledgement for the ways that you are learning and the way that you are progressing. So take 2 deep breaths, give yourself a little bit of love, and let's make this nap easy.
All right, so when you're adding negative numbers, the main thing to remember is that positive and negative numbers are opposites of each other. So if you add together two numbers that are opposites, they're going to cancel each other out. So for example, if I have -3 plus 4, the 3 negatives are going to cancel out 4 of the positives, which means that your answer is a +1. So if you have opposite numbers being added together, like a -3 and a +4, the actual number answer is going to be those two numbers subtracted, like 4 minus 3. And the sign of that number depends on which one is bigger. So in this case, we had more positives than we had negatives, and so the answer was positive. It's positive. In this example, where we have -7 and a +5, we have more negatives than positives. And so that means that you're going to end up with a -2, because out of the 7 negatives, 5 of them get canceled out by the 5 positives, which leaves you with a remaining -2. Versus in this situation, if they're both negatives and you're adding them together, then they're the same thing that you're adding together. They're not going to cancel each other out, and you're going to end up with a -9. So a really good way to visualize this is with temperature. So if we have -8 represent 8 ice cubes, so like a cold temperature, and then we have +11 represent 11 little fires, when you add these together, the ice cubes and the fires are going to neutralize each other, because the fire is going to melt the ice cube and the ice cube is going to put out the fire. And so they neutralize each other, giving us an overall, I guess you could say, temperature of 0, because it's just going to be lukewarm water at that point. It's not going to be icy and it's not going to be hot. It's just going to be lukewarm. So what that would look like is you'd say, okay, well, this ice cube is going to put out this fire. This ice cube is going to put out this one, and so on and so forth. All of these are going to get canceled out, and you're left with 3 fires left over. So your answer would be a +3. Now notice that the actual numbers were subtracted, because the process of the negatives canceling out the positives is kind of like taking away those positives, because the negatives cancel those positives out. And so the way you would figure that out numerically is you would say 11 minus 8 gives you a +3. You could also look at this with debt. So if I had -8, which would be like $8 of debt, and then I added $11 to that, then I could say that I could use each one of those dollars to pay off my debt, which would cancel out the amount of money I had, but it would also cancel out my debt, leaving me with $3. That would be another way that you could look at it. And you can use whichever analogy makes the most sense to you. So if I have a situation like this, where I have 3 ice cubes and 1 fire, the ice cube and the fire are going to cancel out, leaving me with a -2 as my answer. In this situation, if I think about it in terms of money, and I say I have $3 of debt plus $1, then the debt and the money are going to cancel each other out, and that leaves me with $2 of debt. So notice that this is a little bit different than this problem, because in this problem, I was left with $3 of debt, $3 of positive money, versus in this one, I was left with $2 of debt. So it depends on which number is bigger. Like in this number, the positive number was bigger, and in this problem, the negative number was bigger. And so we were left with, like our leftovers were negative versus in this one, they were positive. And if you were to add together two negatives, you just add the numbers together. Because if I had 5 ice cubes plus 3 ice cubes, that's just going to give me a total of 8 ice cubes and none of them cancel out. So I'd just say 5 plus 3 equals 8. And if I thought about it in terms of debt, I'd get the same thing, because if I had $5 of debt plus $3 of debt, I'd have a total of $8 of debt. So if we use this principle to apply to decimals, the first thing you want to look at is, is this a situation where they're going to be canceling each other out, or where they're going to be combining? So in this case, if I were to take a negative 318.6 and add 41.35 to it, the positive and the negative aspect of these two numbers would cancel each other out, which means the number part of my answer is going to be 318.6 minus 41.35, because the 41.35 that's positive is going to cancel out that much of the 318.6. And then after I figure out what that number is, which I'll do in just a second, then I would want to say that it's going to be a negative answer, because my negative part of my number is bigger than my positive part. So when they cancel out, the leftover part is going to be negative. So I would go in and I'd do that subtraction. Should probably add in a 0 here, so that the place values match. And then I could cancel out the 6, make that a 5 to carry the 1 over to the hundredths. 10 minus 5 is 5. 5 minus 3 is 2. Bring down the decimal. 8 minus 1 is 7. 1 minus 4, I can't do that, so I'll borrow, leaving me with a 2 and an 11. 11 minus 4 is 7, and 2 minus nothing is 2. So my answer would be negative 277.25. And that would be how I would add those negative decimals. If I were to add negative fractions, I would go through the same process, where I'd start off by asking, is this a situation where I'm adding two of the same thing together? Or is this something where I'm adding together two opposites where they're going to cancel each other out? So in this case, I have a negative plus a negative, which is kind of like adding ice cubes to ice cubes. So they're going to just become more icy, or more negative, I guess. So I know that my answer is going to be negative. And the way that I figure out what the number is I just add together the fractions following the rules for fraction addition. So in order to do fraction addition, you have to have common denominators. So when I look at the current denominators of 2 and 3, that tells me my common denominator is going to be 6. So I'm going to rewrite each of these fractions with a denominator of 6. So to get from 1/2 to 6, I need to go and multiply the top and bottom by 3. So 2 times 3 will give me 6, and then 1 times 3 will give me 3. So 3/6 is an equivalent fraction to 1/2. And then for 2/3, I'm going to have to go 3 times 2 to get 6. And if I do 2 times 2, that gives me 4. And when I add these together, they're both negatives. But when I add these two together, I'll add the numerators together, because that's how you do fraction addition. So I'll say, okay, negative 3 plus a negative 4 means that I'm going to have 7 negatives, and the denominator stays the same of just being a 6. So when you're adding negative numbers, the big thing to pay attention to is the fact that adding positive and negative numbers is a different process than adding two negative numbers together. Because a positive and a negative number are going to cancel each other out, versus two negatives are just going to become more negative. So when you add together a positive and a negative number, you may get a positive answer or a negative answer, depending on which number is bigger. So in this situation, the -5 was bigger than the 4, and so that means that your answer was a negative answer. In this one, you had a bigger 9 than the -3, and so your answer was positive because the bigger number was a positive number. Now, one quick note on this, when I say bigger than, I don't mean greater than, because technically all negative numbers are less than positive numbers, but I like to use the phrase bigger than to mean that the absolute value of the number is greater than the absolute value of the other number. That would be the formal mathematical way of saying that, but I think bigger than is just a lot easier to say. So with my students, I always say bigger than, but that is different than greater than. So just a little note on that. So basically, the sign of your answer is going to depend on which number is bigger. And then you find the difference by subtracting the actual numbers. So like 5 minus 4 is 1 because those 4 positives canceled out 4 of the negatives, leaving you with just 1 negative. Or if you do 9 minus 3, that equals 6 because 3 of the ice cubes canceled out 3 of the 9 fires, leaving you with 6 fires left over. So that's how you add positive and negative numbers. Negatives and negatives are a lot easier because the answer is always going to be negative and you just add the numbers together. Because if you add -2 plus -6, that's like adding 2 ice cubes to 6 ice cubes, which just equals 8 ice cubes. And that's how you add negative numbers. I hope this video was helpful. Let me know how easy this was for you in the comments below and then subscribe for more easy math videos. You may also want to check out my negative numbers playlist on YouTube, or if you'd like more help with your math homework, you can go to mathtutoringonline.com to ask a question or book a one-on-one tutoring session. See you soon!